honestly now she held a sense of crisis in her heart. I can't believe I can fight with this form of mine back and forth. The amount of magic is as it appears, but that alone will not get you into a bitter fight. The tricky thing about Xion was that her seemingly disorganized swordsmanship was actually of a fairly high standard. Although she wasn't quite as good as the Benimaru, she had been approved by Master Hakuru. That is to say, with the sword skill of Xion already out of the school, coupled with Xion's stiffness, that furious action was like a nightmare to Minaza. However, these were not actually what the Xion intended. She was tempted to beat Minaza quickly and advance to the next level, but Minaza was stronger than she thought. True to the name, the most superior warrior in the Empire, as Lord Raimuru said, is an opponent who cannot be careless. I didn't think of that until now. Xion doesn't generally think too deeply about breakthroughs until it gets to this point. It's a temporary thing to do, but it's always good to be aware of the use of your mind at this point. That being said, you don't get inspired just by using a little bit of your mind. Though uninspired, Xion has Seal's help. You have the power, and it took a while to pick the most suitable race out of all possibilities, and now it's decided. What's right for you? Hearing this, Xion remembered. As Raimuru awarded the prize, Xion seemed to be asked a lot of questions, but she didn't think deeply about it. Remember, at the time the answer was all to you and nothing has changed since then. The other companions evolved, and Xion didn't care. Benimaru has evolved from a demon to an Inferno Oni and is said to have acquired the power of a demigod. By contrast, Xion was still mortal now. Still, she didn't care, because it was strong enough. However, that alone cannot defeat Minaza. Inevitably, Xion would seek power as a result, and in response to her expectations, the soul corridor was connected. I think the tyrant is good. As a higher Holy Spirit, it is unparalleled in its material power. Next is the validation of competency. Over to you. Xion dryly threw it all over, focusing her attention on Minaza. Although Xion's attitude was cold, somehow she felt that voice had an air of delight. It may have been Xion's illusion, but reality did change. What, you bastard? The strong demonic aura that erupted. Are you still trying to say that you've been merciful so far? The spirit overrides the flesh. Thus, responding to the heartfelt request of the Xion promoted the awakening of the race. The possibility of evolution is managed through the hands of the Seal, and the choice made is the most appropriate one. Xion evolves to the rare and powerful overlord of the divine monster spirit, the fighting spirit Oni. The flesh achieves infinite regeneration, and as long as there is mana, it is eternal and indestructible. The attacks emitted by its flesh can cause not only physical damage but also damage to the spiritual side. Being a spiritual being with no weakness attribute, while having superiority over all attributes, Xion evolved into what can be called a spiritual lifeform's heavenly enemy-like existence. This evolution reshaped Xion's flesh. In order to be more specialized in combat, an optimized body was formed. Xion basically comprehended this on instinct. As if stretching out under a clear blue sky, the mood was soothing. The new Gorokimaru, a sword held in Xion's hands, was erected. Did I keep you waiting? However, the time for fighting you is over. In a polite tone, Xion hitched a conversation with Minaza. Don't underestimate people. Just as you hide your strength, I will also show my true form. As the saying goes, Minaza's form became more alien, even cutting lifespans and becoming more aggressive to confront Xion. Then the battle began. Die in pain, O you who want to take our place in peace. Come out, emergence. I will feed myself and instinctively turn my enemies. The world is alive and kicking. The winner is decided in a flash. Minaza, intent on a final attack of the evil forbidden, was shattered by Xion's sword before she could show her full form. In front of the beaten pieces of flesh, Xion declared, "Not only is it annoying, but it's full of crap." What the hell is going on? Among the shredded meat was a Minaza head that was more than half missing. The inescapable death had closed in on Minaza, but she was shaken by her inability to accept reality. Xion looked down coldly at Minaza and asked, "Do you need to make a mistake?" For Minaza, Xion was really the worst opponent. Before evolving into a spirit fighter, it was only due to the presence or absence of an ultimate skill that the fighters were able to compete. From this point on, it's enough to say that Minaza won't have a chance of winning. After the evolution of Xion, her power of will had already reached the realm of an ultimate skill. The Otachi sword used by her has also evolved to the mythical level, which should be called Great Gorikamaru. The situation would be different if Minaza's strength wasn't borrowed. With the current Xion as an opponent, she still couldn't do it. No, it can't be, too strong. But, however, my children, will you? The eyes were out of sight, but Minaza said so anyway. However, her hopes had been shattered, and the heaven and earth of Xion had come alive, decapitating everything that was alive. If only it were that way. The words of Xion contain compassion. You are too gentle. If you're that naive, there is no way to defeat the Worm King. Minaza's mana was thus exhausted. The end of life determined the victory of the Xion. Worm King? Minaza leaves this word with a very important meaning. However, Xion did not care at all. Whatever, it's none of my business. Just like that, the boundaries were crisply drawn and did not remain in Xion's memory. Minaza, the invader from the otherworld, died tragically with her children. The queen who had been granted refuge by Emperor Rudra and wanted to build a paradise for the worm demon clan disappeared from the world on the eve of her ambition being achieved. Among the 7 demon nobles, Veyron was the second strongest ranking, with the rank of duke, and had lasted undefeated for over 4,000 years. Even so, Malcolm, who could not imitate the figure of a martial artist in front of him, could only feel the humiliation of lying on the ground. Malcolm's unique skill, the disguiser, mimics Kondo's stance and can correctly operate the proxy rites. Turning Kondo's body into his own, there was not the slightest bit of waste. Veyron is strong, but it's still Malcolm who's better. It is precisely because of Veyron's high skill that he is able to do more than just bend the knee. As a demon, his combat abilities were simply invincible. It was a horrible reality, but Veyron was undaunted. Not only that, but the heart is enjoying the situation as it is. That's for sure. Since boasting about being able to win in front of Master Ultima and the subordinates was a must for victory to be achieved. O demon, is the name Veyron? Your fight is commendable, but no matter how many times you try again, it is futile. I've seen through you. I'm good enough for you now. Maybe so. I didn't show any real talent, but my assessment is correct. What? Malcolm tried to persuade him to surrender, showing a surprised look when he saw Veyron's reaction. In Malcolm's opinion, the gap of strength between himself and Veyron was like heaven and earth, and Kondo's strength was overwhelming, only now it was Malcolm's own. It was for this reason that Veyron's statement made him angry. As a demon noble, Veyron had less than a quarter the amount of mana, which had previously seemed a bit tricky because it wasn't one-on-one, but now it was just Veyron alone, and since there was no one in the way, it was overwhelmingly beneficial to Malcolm. Despite this, Veyron stood up and snorted. You can't win with imitation, because I'm good at imitation too. Huh? What do you mean? A fake is not as good as the real one. Do you understand that's the truth? What are you trying to say? Malcolm was anxious. Veyron smiled darkly in his heart and said, it would have been better if he hadn't had a question and answer session and just killed him. I'll tell you what. What I think is my best work, it's... Veyron shouted, unleashing his newly acquired powers. Veyron is Ultima's butler. He served around the clock, taking care of all matters pertaining to Ultima, and anything his master requested must be taken care of. The specialized field of cooking was given to Zonda, but everything else was under the jurisdiction of Veyron. What Veyron has created in this environment is the unique skill Imitation Master, a convenient power that can change into anyone. By unleashing this imitator, Veyron would be able to incarnate into the figure he had seen. It was indeed an ability similar to Malcolm's disguiser, but with much higher precision than disguiser. However, Malcolm was strengthened by the power of Emperor Rudra. Considering that aspect, Veyron should have no chance of winning, the matter goes without saying. The character that Veyron is trying to emulate is more powerful than the Kondo that Malcolm is emulating. It was only that Malcolm was able to reproduce very little of Kondo's strength, and was unable to reproduce creatures that were too powerful, as would be expected from Veyron, who had the same ability. So what Veyron chose was a supernatural being that even his master was enthralled by, and he wanted to imitate Demon Lord Rimuru and turn one end of his power into his own. At this point, however, Veyron heard voices. "It is impossible to give permission in this matter. In exchange, I'll give you strength." It's a plausible thing with the voice of the world. Veyron was at first at a loss for words, but became grateful while understanding the implications. "I, even such as I am guarded by that love." Like a prayer to God, Veyron offered thoughts of thanksgiving. And so it was that Veyron found that his skills had evolved. Even mimicry, as long as it moves the person, becomes art, and as is the case with proving the phrase, "power does move the person in power." The voice gifted the true fake writer. It was because of this skill that Veyron was sure to win over Malcolm. Appearing in front of Malcolm was the young martial artist with a sharp eye. "Who? No, it doesn't matter who it is. I've never seen a stronger swordsman than Kondo, and it's your freedom to imitate whoever you are, and even then you still have no chance of winning." The young martial artist that Veyron imitated looked very similar to Ajira. But that was par for the course, because that was what Hari Byakuya looked like when he was young. This result is exactly the height of imitation that Veyron has achieved. Veyron thought to himself, "The real fakes are writers who are able to copy the works of the artist at his peak." It was in response to Ultima's request that Veyron exhausted all areas of artistic study, and it was for this reason that he came up with the idea. Even if the character is not actually encountered, the ability to reproduce his peak performance by relying on the real and fake writer is really a power of foul play. Even further, Veyron liberated himself. His master, Ultima, had achieved evolution with the power given by Rimuru, and under the influence of his bounty, Veyron's power had also been enhanced, and Veyron's current amount of mana could even match that of an awakened demon lord. What? It's like you're a different person than you were." Malcolm was startled. Ignoring Malcolm's mood, Veyron solidified a sword in his hand, an ability unique to demons' material creation. Although in the end it is only a fake copy of Ajira's blade change, this is already something that has the effect of giving the real fake writer an extra special gift, and is infinitely closer to the performance of the real thing. Veyron glanced at Malcolm and spoke. "Yes, Kondo is a man to be reckoned with, but what are you trying to say?" "Lord Carrera has gone off to fight, and I think his fate will soon come to an end." "Ha ha ha, what a stupid thing to say." Malcolm scoffed. Malcolm could not have imagined Kondo's defeat at all. The two glared at each other. Since the two sides' claims are incompatible, it's only a matter of strength after that. Both sides began to move at the same time. Plum blossoms. True fate transcends wonderful technique, Yatsujirikura, Ya Hashimoto. At this moment, the fake becomes the real thing. The 8 sword flashes released by Veyron bounced off 5 sword paths, the remaining 3 sword flashes sliced off Malcolm's arms, and the last flash of the blade came to rest just above Malcolm's neck. Ah. Because of the sharp pain brought on by both arms, Malcolm lifted the change. Even if he wanted to stop the bleeding, there was nothing he could do about it, having already lost both arms. "I'm not gonna kill you." "Gay, you want to take me hostage?" "No, how can that be?" Veyron also lifted the change, snickering slyly. "I'm Miss Ultima's housekeeper. I'll do anything to make her happy." It wasn't a reply that could be counted as an answer, and it gave Malcolm a feeling of boundless terror. "What do you want to do to me?" Malcolm couldn't resist asking, a reaction that no doubt indicated that he had fallen completely into Veyron's strategy. Veyron replied, "Missy is a very cruel person, and loves nothing more than the feelings that the adversary feels without of pain, and usually does not kill the opponent directly, but lets his body decay little by little. I was in the position of advising you, but that's all." "Don't want to hear it," Malcolm thought to himself. "But Veyron is relentless. I like it best, my son, to see a strong man begging for mercy in a miserable and pathetic way, and to feel a joy unmatched by anything else. So, Malcolm is the most brilliant toy of all, and Veyron's words declare it. Stop, stop. I surrender, or I swear I will not resist in the future, so." Malcolm had begun to beg, and no one could blame him for such behavior, and he, who had been at a loss as to what the defeat would be, became vulnerable when he fell into a defensive position. Malcolm was indeed powerful, but his spirit had not been sufficiently exercised, only given borrowed ultimate strength and not by his own pursuit of the limits. The demon among demons, Veyron, is very good at inspiring fear in his enemies. "Wahoo, sorry. Don't worry about it, I'll say no." "Why?" "Because the Empire's policy is the same, right? I agree with your way of thinking. Hey! Isn't it wonderful that as soon as a war is waged, you never approve of the surrender of the other side? The weak, from the beginning, should be fully obeyed and wait to lose before coming to the bargaining table. It's too humiliating to do. It's a very resonant way of thinking. That is. Am I right? What you have been doing all along, how can you say no when it's your turn, so?" Veyron sneered obscenely, a crooked expression that made his ears look like they were about to crack, precisely because he was usually a gentlemanly butler, and now this smile looked even more obnoxious, tearing at the other's heart like a sharp claw. "Take responsibility, boy. Then, provide pleasure for Miss Ultima." Veyron showed his true nature. Very much in keeping with the identity of the first dependents of Ultima, both cruel and sadistic, unrelenting, this is Veyron. "Help, help, help me, Lieutenant Kondo." Malcolm's cries for help couldn't get through to Kondo. "Ooh, well, that's a comforting cry, but it's likely to cause trouble for everyone else, so I'll have to quiet you down first." With that said, Veyron rambunctiously plucked out Malcolm's tongue. "Ooh, ooh, ooh, woo hoo 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 hoo." Malcolm's dissonant voice echoed in this otherworldly separation from the present world. As for the fate of Malcolm afterwards, Sue was in a good mood right now. He secretly watched Raimoru's battle, and now Raimoru has secured a big victory. "I'm lucky to be able to watch a battle like this." Raimoru, with both Veldora and Vielgrind as opponents, looks to still be at an advantage, and also completes the evolution by devouring Veldora. On top of that, not minding the onslaught that those clones were completely unable to counter, they managed to overwhelm Vielgrind. It's impossible to tell from the outside just how strong Raimoru has become, and even if you go through the Soul Corridor, Sue realizes it is still completely imperceptible. There should be more to the curiosity in this regard than just the desire of Sue alone. At least, Diablo had taken little action until the end, and was now undoubtedly staying by Raimoru's side. The bastard was always sneaking away. In spite of the thought in his heart, Diablo made a claim that was again understandable and impossible to complain about publicly. To put it mildly, there's Testarossa. Although she blandly declared to stay, considering the implications, Sue felt mixed emotions. Because of understanding her thoughts, Sue didn't object. Sensing the unfavorable situation on his side, Vielgrind shifted to a guarded Rudra-dominated move from the middle of the battle with Raimoru, and the other 7 gates had no guarantee they wouldn't be broken. It's unlikely that the cunning Testarossa didn't decipher the possibility without pointing it out, which would suggest that she thought she could do something on her own, though I don't think she could have won over Lord Vielgrind, but that's a remarkable amount of confidence. Sue correctly read Testarossa's mind. Testarossa guessed that she wanted to challenge Vielgrind again. She wanted to challenge an opponent that Sue couldn't beat, so Sue developed jealousy, a small thing Sue hoped the others would understand, Sue thought. Benimaru also understood Testarossa's thoughts and approved of her actions. To ask why, it's because Benimaru can't beat Vielgrind either. Benimaru, who was good at fire inflammation, was basically useless when facing Vielgrind, who could be called the fire inflammation god, and the attack might not even be able to buy time, but it was Testarossa who was more suitable for this task. If Sue was to have Vielgrind as his opponent, he would not be able to survive for even a few seconds, and if he were to face Vielgrind, who was able to dominate space, all of Sue's skills would be useless. Knowing that, it wasn't really fun for Sue, and even if it wasn't, he had to endorse Testarossa. Just like that, Sue, who was in a good mood because of Raimaru's victory and was discontented because of his own lack of strength, was really engaged in his work with a complicated mood. Raimaru's order to kill the enemy was absolute, and as for obeying that order, Sue would not be confused. Originally Sue felt that it was only natural to eliminate the enemy. I must hurry up and get back to Lord Raimaru. His loyalty to Raimaru became higher, and Sue obeyed his own high-spirited heart and burrowed into the door. He has captured the opponent's aura. Without hesitation, Sue ran directly towards the enemy. Regardless of which door it was, the interior was mimicked into a gladiatorial arena. In the middle of that, the target object stood. Yoo-hoo, are you my match? The man there, smiling triumphantly, is Gardner in the fourth sequence of the single digits. It's rare that you're here, at least introduce yourself. My name is Gardner, and I assume the guardianship of His Majesty Rudra, which should be short-lived, so let me have a good time in the meantime. Gardner looked at Sue like a valuation, wondering in his mind how to torment his opponent, his hidden sadistic interest making him dumbfounded. In contrast, Sue was speechless. Ah no, slightly emptied of time, he sighed. Is it going to take all my precious time to take care of a guy like you? Sue spoke in displeasure, something Gardner could hear very well. What did you say? My name is Sue, and I will accept it if you surrender, but you don't mean it, do you? Of course. Gardner was agitated by Sue's attitude and had fallen into Sue's trap before he could even begin to fight, before he himself was conscious. Sue. I've heard that according to Kondo-san's research, you're doing something like imitating the Intelligence Bureau in the Land of Monsters, right? In other words, not actually good at direct combat. Of course, it wasn't because Kondo's investigation was lukewarm, but because Gardner had a certain level of knowledge of Sue's strength, and on that basis had launched the provocation. Originally, he thought he could win by not doing this kind of thing, but he still thought that if he could lose his cool because of it, he could still earn it. Such a shallow tactic had lost its meaning when it was provoked by Sue. Imbecile, don't talk nonsense, let's get started. In just this short time, Sue had already seen Gardner's strength, and Gardner hadn't noticed it and was still recklessly slashing towards Sue. Gardner's weapon was a green dragon blade held in both hands, a thicker, larger blade than a long blade, difficult to master but powerful. That smooth continuous attack was as wonderful as a dance. Powerful and sharp, combined with Gardner's superior skills, only these attacks still didn't work against Sue. With a grunt, Sue dived into the shadows, and Gardner's green dragon blade slashed open, as the inertial body balance was a bit unstable. Sue didn't let that go, and a shot from the shadow at Gardner's feet flew into the chest of its prey. Gar? Spitting blood to the ground for Gardner. Sue, who emerged from the shadow after stabbing the fatal blow, was holding a Walter P99 miniature pistol, a test piece that Raimaru had Kaijin make, which Sue had surreptitiously scavenged and had practiced firing from shadow space, the result of which was a blow through Gardner's heart. Well, that's boring. No matter what kind of strongman, launching an attack in a moment of his carelessness could end his opponent with a single blow. Sue, who insisted on this kind of claim, still knew that in the face of some opponents, this move really wouldn't work, but Gardner didn't seem to fall into that category, and the strategy worked when it was brilliant. The gunshot just now added all the effects of Sue's skills, including the unique skills of super acceleration and one-hit kill, plus poison, paralysis, and corrosion effects. The projectile's initial velocity had reached dozens of times the speed of sound through hyper-acceleration, and it had also been given the power of a one-hit kill, which could be achieved even by destroying the spiritual body. And with all kinds of anomalies attached, Gardner was bound to die, and even if it wasn't Sue, the others would surely make that judgment. But, idiot, you're careless. Behind Sue, who was walking towards the gate, the sound resounded, and before the sound could be heard, Sue's had been chopped off, and now the green dragon blade had drilled out from its chest. Well, that's a pain in the ass. It's okay to kill a trickster like that, but it's not fun enough to win in a flash. It was Gardner, who should have been dead, who said this. The body still fell to the ground, but Gardner stood there with his hands and feet intact, and that was because of some special ability Gardner had been given. The power of substitution, parallel existence, is the power that Rudra lent to Gardner. Unlike Veelgrind, who had a huge amount of mana, Gardner was only average as a saint, and although he could rival an awakened demon lord, he could not separate several other bodies in a row. He could only spare one, but that was enough. No matter what kind of cunning opponent it was, as long as the one in front of them was a real body, it was impossible to see through the true and false, using this to lure the opponent into carelessness, allowing one of them to act as bait, and then the main body to make a strong attack, was what Gardner had done. While a must-win was assured, it would have left Gardner unable to feel satisfied. 4. Gardner likes to torment opponents who beg for mercy, and fighting in a manner like this can result in the opponent being killed outright without a chance to beg for mercy. Hey, are you still alive? Hey, that's impossible. Despite the grumbling, Gardner hadn't forgotten his mission to make sure he actually killed the intruder, so he had to check if Sue was actually dead. At this time, an icy voice came from Gardner's ear. Decapitated, the heart was pierced by Sue, and the body dissipated into a black fog and disappeared. Oh, no. Gardner let out a yelp, but it was too late. If he hadn't lost my cool before, he might have realized that it was a body split, but that's just an if. And it's pointless to say anything afterwards. Gardner's takedown attempt leads directly to the result. It's enough to be bait. The power is too much for you to waste. Sue's cold voice echoed. Sue's accusation hit the spot and stung Gardner inside. In fact, Gardner had met Veelgrind once. Upon becoming a saint, he learned that the marshal was a beautiful woman, and he had the pleasure of challenging her, only to have Veelgrind, elegantly seated in her seat, look at his other body with amusement and beat him to death. From then on, what he longed for most, what his heart longed for most, was the power of Veelgrind, the green dragon blade that Gardner loved to use and that Veelgrind had given him. Sue saw through it all. Gardner was just dancing on the palm of Sue's hand from the beginning. Son of a... Gardner shouted. In such an absolute state of affairs, a shaking within arises. If one had doubts about one's own abilities, if it was a probe power, then one would be affected to a certain extent. This kind of opportunity, it was impossible for Sue not to seize. Understood, then you die. After saying that, Sue unleashed his unique skill, the Hidden One. That's when Gardner makes his final killer move. R-O-O-O-O-O. How about this? How about this? Either one is my own body, and though I will die, I will pull you along with me. The plurality of other bodies attacked together, each one being its own body, and it was pointless to take down only one of them. Gardner made the parallel existence's ultimate attack by burning life. It was only something that could be done in a split second, so it was difficult for Sue, who was preparing to launch a fatal blow with the Hidden One, to evade. The biggest weakness of Sue's split body was the inability to unleash unique skills other than the main body, and even Sue, who could manipulate multiple split bodies at the same time, could not overcome this difficulty. This is the difference between separate bodies and other bodies. If you are close enough to the main body, you will think that you can activate the skill even if you have a split body, but this will create a time difference, and you will be broken if you are facing a stronger opponent than yourself. Gay. Sue thought carelessly. The moment of the last blow was the most dangerous moment, and it was common sense to stay awake and never be careless, but to understand this and still be in crisis was a disgrace to Sue. Forgive me, Lord Rimuru. I will live and the atonement will stay after. Sue prepared himself for Gardner's final attack, and since death was not to be tolerated, it had to be survived, but at this point. Atone not, for I'll give thee strength, O Sue. Sue felt as if he had heard something incredible. This voice is. It was understood in an instant. As for the sound, absolutely no attempt should be made to track it down. It was a dereliction of duty on the part of a person in charge of the intelligence department, but Sue made a judgment immediately. So be it so, that the name of the power given to you may be. As if born with the power, Sue understood what this power was, and at the same time, in 1,000,000 times longer consciousness, he realized that his clone body had changed into an other body. This also means that Sue has also acquired parallel existence. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to die too, but this guy's finished too, he deserves it. Is that the end of your last words? How is that possible? There was no doubt that you were the one who. That's right, but what's over here is my own body, so die if you understand, son of A. This time, Gardner literally had nothing left. 1,000 hands. Sue stretched forward and became 1,000 wrists that caught Gardner. This was the effect of one of the powers of the Shadow Moon King Tsukuyomi, which was just given to Sue. If you use this with parallel existence, you can use the shadow that creates the plural wrist to attack. Gardner, his body restrained, cried out in pain. Go ahead, you people, you'll be killed by Lord Veilgrind and Lord Granite anyway. Words cannot be finished. Sue ended Gardner's life with one hit kill. Lord Veilgrind has been defeated by Lord Rimuru, and that Granite, Benimaru who is better than me, has gone to him, I'm afraid, as I am, it's no longer any of your business. Sue left these words, allowing Gardner to be swallowed up by the shadow and fade away. Chapter 5. The Truth of the Emperor. Damrada is inside one of the 8 gates. Thinking about why things are the way they are. The status quo is dire. Yuki fell into the hands of Emperor Rudra, and his companions were similarly deprived of their freedom. Since Rudra ordered them to be taken care of, the position of Damrada could not be defied. Now, from Rudra came other orders. After handing over the responsibility of taking care of Yuki to someone else, he boarded the Emperor's flagship. And then the air showdown began. The real marshal is Veilgrind, and only the first 6 people in the sequence are informed of this. It cannot be outsourced. This is an absolute order, and for Damrada, who is often required to leave the country, such important secrets even require a memory operation. Yes, I made a pact with the Lord, that's. Seeing the gesture that Marshal Veilgrind had changed into, Damrada remembered the incident. In the meantime, all sorts of memories have clearly revived. The most important pact with Rudra is still remembered, but the reason for making it cannot be remembered. So, what to do? There's no time to fret. The demon Lord Rimuru, seen not too long ago, seemed so kind that he didn't feel like much of a threat. He had thought that after Rimuru had been captured by the foreign space created by Veilgrind, he should have been unable to hinder Veldora's capture battle. Indeed, success dominated Veldora, and the situation thus began to turn in Rudra's favor. But none of those things mattered to Damrada. Not only that, but for Rudra as well. Thoughts began to clear up like clouds turning to light, and Damrada pondered what would be best for Rudra. However, before he could come up with an answer, Demon Lord Rimuru made his move. With a fury like never seen before. Why would one think he wouldn't pose a threat? Damrada simply wanted to question himself. Judging by the fact of breaking free of the seal of Veelgrind, there was no doubt that it was fraught with threats. But there is more to it than that. From the moment he saw Rimuru appear, Damrada realized that he was still too naive in his opinion. Rimuru glanced at Damrada with his eyes that glittered with golden light, a look that was unmistakably cold, almost as if there was no need to see Damrada and others as enemies. Kondo responded immediately, but the attack didn't work. Is that all? Then there would be no need for vigilance at all. Put off the treatment of you, fear not, and don't be killed before I am your opponent. Rimuru's eyes looked like they were talking. Could it be that to Rimuru, Damrada and the others have been treated as if they were dead? Even Emperor Rudra was no exception, and Damrada couldn't help but feel that everyone would be killed if this continued. What are the conditions for tactical victory in these situations for Rimuru? The needs to meet both of these conditions. I reclaiming Veldora. 2. Elimination of the aggressor. Veldora is an ally of Demon Lord Rimuru, and taking away the free will to be Veldora is something that Rimuru would never approve of. Having come to this place means having made the consciousness of having Veelgrind as an opponent. The direction of this win is an unknown in Damrada's eyes. An unattainable pinnacle matchup is not something that Damrada can extrapolate. Next, it was about eliminating the invaders. He had heard that Rimuru was a pacifist, but must not mistake that for non-resistancism. The few invasions that have occurred in the past have all been repelled. It's not a very good technique. With the assistance of Veldora, the land of monsters won back-to-back battles. The Empire's aggression was something that Rimuru would never tolerate. The time for bargaining is over, and it is conceivable that the only remaining recourse is to massacre all the Imperial soldiers. At this point, there is no point in talking about strategic strategy, only fighting to the last option. There was no wartime agreement between the two, and even surrender was no guarantee that they would be spared. The Empire had set a trap, and had lost its credibility, and all the windows of negotiation had been closed. I should have been more serious about stopping His Majesty. Damrada was equally proud of the Empire's war power. Excessive faith in one's own strength, thinking that one will not encounter defeat, can arbitrarily determine the terms of victory. Show the enemy the majesty of the Empire, defeat the enemy completely, lose the will to rebel before annexing it. Make a big blood change in the leadership, or turn the current leadership into puppets who can do whatever they want as long as they win the war. The Empire has always expanded in this way, but this time there was a major miscalculation. Even Emperor Rudra could not guarantee that there would be no problems if the forces of the evenly matched opponents clashed with each other. It was only natural that Damrada would feel melancholy. That said, what really bothers Damrada is still about his own pact with Rudra. Rimuru no doubt intends to kill Rudra. What bothers Damrada is how he should act if things turn out that way. For Damrada, there was a desire to keep his pact with Rudra no matter what, but that was ultimately because Damrada wanted to do it with his own hands. However, it's hard to win with Rimuru as an opponent. Damrada's war analysis of the battle. The flagship was wrapped in horrible magic, and those who survived guarded the 8 gates. Can this be called a toss-up or not? Damrada could only think that they themselves had made an extremely outrageous mistake. And then, now. Long time no see? In front of Damrada's eyes was a pleasantly smiling maiden. This maiden, who exudes fearsome power, is truly the strongest corner of the world, one of the 7 pillars of demons, the primordials. Her name is Ultima, a subordinate of the demon lord Rimuru. Not only to make the primordial his own men, but to give them strength. Up close, it's even scarier. The terror of the blessing of the dead, both the precision and the prowess became so over the top that it was enough to show that the demons had indeed evolved. Ignoring the spying on him by outsiders, Rimuru unreasonably opened the huge demon summoning door and then acted like something to the summoned minions. The Empire didn't have time to look into the matter, but Ultima told him the answer. Ultima laughed out happily. Ah ha 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 ha, did you really notice that? Yes, Lord Rimuru has given us strength, and now we're in great shape. Contrary to the very happy Ultima, the word seemed like a nightmare to Damrada. Granting the power to a primordial, although one could have expected it, it was not something that an ordinary demon lord could do. Even that guy Crimson, the primordials amongst his men, did not evolve. Thinking this way, one could understand how abnormal what Demon Lord Raimuru had done was. Even so, Damrada had no intention of losing. In order to fulfill the pact with Rudra, it was necessary to go all out to challenge this demon named Ultima. I don't always aim for the most reasonable path, even if I choose a thorny path, as long as the result achieves my goal. Damrada stopped agonizing. Even after seeing Ultima, who had displayed overwhelming strength, she still posed without fear. Well, it's time for a fight. It's natural. As His Majesty's knight, I will make my power fully known to you. That's something to look forward to, so let's get started. Thus begins the battle between the single-digit sequence of the rank 2 Damrada and the Pain Lord Ultima. Ultima revealed a shallow snort and observed Damrada. The incredible power of being human was felt in Damrada and stood out even among the saints. The stance was unbroken and even made it feel like the win might have been impossible without evolution. It's that one, isn't it? It feels like it can match Hinata's. That person is like the natural enemy of a magic creature, and this person gives the impression of purely honing his skills in person to person. This type is really tricky. As far as Ultima knows, opponents who hone their skills are tricky. Hakuru is a good example of being able to deal with a variety of situations with 1,000 different skills. The ability to apply it flexibly is the secret of its power, and that is precisely what has nothing to do with those higher beings. The so-called demons, in contrast to people, possess an overwhelmingly powerful higher existence. It even takes only the liberation of magic to be able to become an attack. The existence located at one of the pinnacle of the demon race is Ultima. Since her birth, she has been familiar with the use of magic, perfect magical domination. There is no need for effort. Just think about it and it can be realized, that is magic. There is no adversary in front of that all-powerful absolute power. The only ones who could possibly outperform themselves were superlative beings of the same class, such as the primordial or the dragon race, and until recently Ultima had believed so. However, this perception is wrong. It was during the battle with Veilgrind that Ultima realized this mistake. Faced with the overwhelmingly high-level presence of Veilgrind, Ultima and others fought as hard as they could and succeeded in knocking out one of her other bodies, albeit with only 10% of her original strength. On the flip side, one more thing learned is that if you get the use of power wrong, you lose to an opponent who is weaker than you. A lot was also learned in the battles that followed. The true dragon race, which is already the strongest in existence, has shown its advanced magical skills, and as a result, the Ultima, a race that prides itself on magic, is overwhelmed by magic. Why it could, during the battle Ultima hadn't understood, but could now. The secret lies in attaching an ultimate skill to magic. The use of an ultimate skill increases the accuracy of the magic, so we can't win. The power of the magic released by Veilgrind out of control, then Ultima had to do her best just to cope. There was nothing more humiliating to Carrera than for the opponent to be more skilled at making the magic she was best at. Yes, it's humiliating. At the same time, she was lucky. She got the chance to experience combat while still surviving without suffering a decisive defeat. Combining the effects of the skill with the magic, the power would grow exponentially, something that Ultima had never thought of all along. The experience gained through that battle had made her aware of more possibilities. It's true that we both have high basic skills, but then again, relying too much on basic skills is also a problem. If one puts in more effort to refine, one can become even stronger. As one of the strongest, Ultima had never aspired to gain power so far, yet this time, she hoped to become even stronger. How strong can a strong person who is already invincible become if he still strives to study and accumulate experience to move up to a higher level? The answer is either Veilgrind or Guy Crimson. From this point of view, There's no doubt that Diablo, who pursued his interests, was also a super-spec presence. Forgetting Testarossa for a moment, Ultima and Carrera, who had never made the effort, were really a far cry from the others in this regard. Ultima knew that she was the most immature of the 7 pillars of primordiality. Even so, it was still possible to fight evenly with Mizari and Rhine. If she fought with all your might, she would feel like she would lose to Testarossa and Carrera. Testarossa is elegant and perfect. Being confident and always belittling others is a bad habit of hers. As for Carrera, it would be more appropriate to call her arrogance inferior. People who know they can do anything well if they take it seriously always lose interest quickly and leave things behind. And then, Ultima. Neither can she operate their magic with the precision of Testarossa, nor does she have as much magic as Carrera, and of the 3 demons outside of Diablo, Ultima should be considered the weakest. She is half-baked in every way, and although her own existence is the result of her talent, she has no experience of studying anything with her whole heart. Thinking of it this way, Ultima and Carrera have a lot of similarities, so the two have been fighting each other for a long time. Carrera has recently become interested in swordplay. Ultima was truly envious of this. However, such thoughts also end to delay. Ultima, who had the good fortune to have the opportunity to awaken, gained power as she had prayed for it. The one with the most room to grow is us. Being able to generate such thoughts, the current Ultima couldn't help but find it a bit ridiculous. It was all thanks to Rimuru, who had become her master. Why Rimuru was able to do things like that, Ultima didn't know, but those thoughts were irrelevant. The most important thing is to become a higher being. Then there's the question of whether or not she can help Rimuru. Watching the battle of Ajira just now, Ultima had been praying, and at the end of that contemplation, an incredible voice was heard. To make this wish come true, I'll help you a little. The next thing to complete is the ultimate skill, the Poisonous Death King Samael. The ability to see through the weaknesses of various living beings and then flexibly use the appropriate state changes to create poison is the power of the King of Poisonous Death, the ultimate skill. Having gained this power, Ultima felt absolutely no possibility of losing. But, however, Ultima suddenly remembered, hone yourself and don't rely too much on strength, that's what Diablo is always saying. She thought that Diablo would always have this kind of zero talk because of his old defeat to Zijin, and always took it as a sarcastic comment from Diablo, who had a bad character. Actually, it was a misunderstanding on Ultima's part. It did contain some sarcasm, but really it was mostly for her sake. Depending on how the strength is used, it can be very different, which was learned from Diablo. After understanding this, she remembered something Diablo had said before. Just relying on the power that has been given won't really make it come into its own, it's true. Ultima now deeply identifies with this statement. These were the words she had heard when she was first given her name and was now indeed thinking according to them. Speaking of which, not to a certain extent, it's true that Diablo wouldn't use the power given by Lord Rimuru, and I originally thought it was just contempt for the enemy, but it turned out to be justified. Then I will do the same. Ultima wants to take advantage of this opportunity to make it food for her own growth. Damrada is a man who can't afford to be careless and just happens to give it his all. Really. If Testarossa finds out he sees us that way, it'll be a big deal. No, it's possible that Testarossa might have fallen for this on purpose, but well, it's a rare opportunity, let's take advantage of it. Damrada, though a formidable opponent, was also little more than an opponent to use for practice in Ultima's eyes. For the first time, she'll use the ultimate skill of her own desire to achieve victory. In this way, Ultima will no doubt gain growth. Ultima swore in her heart. It is not about relying on the innate power, but about making perfect use of the power that one has been given by one's desire to win the battle. For this matter, not just to look up to, but to also be a helper to Rimuru, Ultima thought so. The fighting was extremely intense. Strength boosted, Ultima launched the attack and Damrada dodged it through his own skill. Sometimes concentrating the entire body's fighting chi directly counteracts the attack. It's the deft and nimble improvisation that makes Damrata so powerful. Ultima was frankly impressed by this and found it amusing. Through the showdown with Damrata, a lot of things were realized. So it turns out, so that the action doesn't lose its physical balance, and such an approach seems to work in a fight with Zijin. Zijin was too powerful to be defeated the moment he got close. It does make sense for Zijin's approach to be used in real combat, but it's less suitable for training for grappling. At this point, Damrata is a very fit and good opponent, which is to say the most suitable enemy. Realizing how much she was favored, Ultima could simply defend herself against any attack with overwhelming magical power, and her own attacks could crush all kinds of enemies with brute force alone. This situation had been largely understood before, but now it was finally recognized with more realism. Both began to increase in prowess and the battle became more and more intense. The two were evenly matched in strength and were not yet able to see where victory or defeat was heading. At first glance it might be so. Ha, how pleasant. There's no way you can go on this long of a free practice against Zijin. From the heart of a pleasant Ultima. In contrast, Damrata was full of bitterness. You're underestimating me by treating the match with me as an exercise. Despite saying so, Damrata actually noticed it inside. If this continues, it will be himself who will lose. Ultima is still growing and Damrata is in full swing. There was no time at all to feel the thrill of any fight, just to think about how to take down Ultima and put all of his skills to use in the duel. In the end, the primordial demon was a natural magical genius, and such an existence, which could even tamper with the physical laws of the world, would not be able to do its job as an opponent if the attack was imperfect. Therefore, Damrata applies a surrogate power effect to all attacks to inflict damage on Ultima. It is because it took more than 2,000 years of study to be able to use the powers freely as if they were breathing, to become so familiar with them that Damrata even forgot to borrow them from Rudra. Plus, demons were shackled and now seemingly unshackled, but the demon's mana volume boundary value was still fixed. As a result, Damrata, a sage, has a higher total energy than Ultima, so he can fight Ultima evenly. The more I attack, the more I can expose, but even using a large skill may not be effective. Couldn't win, huh? Considering the fact that Ultima was able to learn a skill that Damrata had painstakingly learned with a single glance, she thought that it would be better to make quick work of it, but to do so would likely reveal a flaw that would be self-defeating. Now, even though it was possible to counteract all of the multiple attacks of equal power released by Ultima at the same time, Ultima not only didn't feel chagrined by this but instead showed a very pleasant expression. That was awesome, like a demonstration. Being said that, instead, Damrata became chagrined. Damrata was driven to desperation. It was as if she was absorbing water from the dry sand, and it was obvious that Ultima was growing. Ha, that's just a laugh. He couldn't help but laugh at himself. The primordial was so horrible that Damrata never thought of it before. To an outsider, one might think the two are evenly matched. However, this equilibrium will soon collapse, and as long as one side is growing, the scales will sooner or later tilt in favor of the other. What a grim reality. The time has come. Aha! We're getting there. Ultima's aura suddenly changed, reserving her remaining strength up until now in order to steal Damrata's skills. No longer preserving strength, Ultima spread 6 pairs behind her, 12 wings, featherless as bat wings, smooth and voluptuous with a lavender glow. Here we go. Goo! After Ultima sent out the announcement, the 12 wings moved simultaneously, changing into a variety of shapes, aiming at Damrata to release the attack. Thin as a blade, pointed as a steel needle, gathered into fist-like chunks, flexible and changing wings, from which it is already very difficult to escape, let alone confront it. Damrata, who wanted to avoid the fist-like wings, was blown away the moment he made contact with the fist, and the strength contained therein was unprecedented, a powerful force that Damrata could not counteract. What was even more frightening was that the strength of Ultima's power was still gradually increasing, and without the upper limit on the amount of mana now, the momentum of growth could not be seen to slow down in the slightest, as if talking about gaining power by simply expecting it. CHR. Ah ha 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 ha. We love this look. Ha. Don't underestimate people, little girl. The power is amazing, but I just won't get hit. Damrada held his breath even more, concentrating on dodging the attack. The mouth says it's no big deal, but the heart is filled with a sense of crisis. You can't win at this rate. However, Ultima was untouched. Then make a break for it. Damrada is looking to strike. One of the wings threading the legs of Damrada, it looked like Damrada didn't get the chance to avoid it. In fact, it was a tactic by Damrada. A race that prided itself on its great power was prone to pride, and even Ultima would have been careless if she had been certain that she would win, an action that Damrada had taken with that in mind. Ah ha 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 ha, don't you keep running around? Or are you tired of running? With a wicked grin on her face, Ultima slowed the attack and began to tease Damrada, the wings not attacking the vital parts, but instead attempting to strike through the limbs of her opponent. Yes, you guys are strong. That's why they despise us and fail at critical moments. Damrada was sure his strategy had worked. While making a wounded fall move, a full-force shot was fired at Ultima. Sheng bang. This is the sure-fire aura of Damrada. This is a blow that is made by refining all the fighting energy of a saint using the power of substitution. If hit by this move, the creature, no matter how powerful, will be destroyed, and even the primordial Ultima will only end up in a physical collapse and disappear. Damrada, who identified himself as victorious, did not feel the aftermath of victory. The thought of stabbing a fatal blow at Ultima somehow sent a sickening chill through him. The collapse disappeared with only a piece of wing, the one that had changed into the shape of Ultima, and Damrada failed to see it. By the time this was noticed, it was too late. Deathly poisonous punch. Damrada's chest was penetrated by Ultima. Imitating Damrada's huge magic power concentrated in her hands, she attacked in a cross-hands pose and mastered this technique perfectly by unleashing the ultimate power, King of Poisonous Death. Moreover, the reason why the nails of all 5 fingers were dyed purple was because the power of the King of Poisonous Death, Death Poison, had broken through Damrada's defenses with a power far greater than the amount of lethal force. This is the moment that tells the difference between winning and losing. Ooh. Damrada coughed up blood and collapsed. Ah ha 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 ha, what a shame. Just as we expected. A wicked snort of laughter resounded. Damrada tries to get back to his feet again but fails miserably. I can't even clench my fists, not even stand. But even so, he still looked at Ultima with all his might and anger. Idiot, that's not a punch, it's a slam. Just seeing it once, can it be imitated? But the prowess is unmistakable, really, wonderful. To sum up, it would be more appropriate to name it the Red Snake Death Poisoner. Damrada meets the ground facing up to the sky. Looking up at the sky, a bitter smile of slight regret was revealed. This time it was a complete failure. He was defeated by the demon lord Raimoru before he could challenge Guy. Maybe some of the elite will survive, but not if they want to make a comeback. Emperor Rudra had no more left to wait for the next opportunity, and until then, the present Rudra would have been. Your Majesty, Damrada whispered, looking back on his life. Damrada, can you listen to me? What is it? If it's a boring complaint, still go and talk to Lord Veilgrind. Or, is it against Lord Veilgrind? If so, it should be kept from me, and I should speak directly to Lord Veilgrind herself, or else it would be a pain in the ass if even I was hated. You're an indifferent guy. No, not that, it's serious business. Please? He actually didn't want to ask. Seeing Rudra's eyes, one already realized that it was going to be a serious topic. If one hears these words, one cannot maintain the relationship as it is now. Damrada didn't want it to be that way. It seems that every reincarnation consumes my heart. No, in Guy's words, it's probably the soul of something. But it doesn't matter. What does matter is that I might not become me. The reincarnation of Rudra the hero was not achieved by magic, but by a special ritual to inherit a power that was too great. The cost of gaining power over the ultimate spiritual beings, the dragon race, in mortal form, is managed by Rudra's own power, so Damrata cannot propose a solution. The soul is consumed. After that, His Majesty will become no longer His Majesty. Ah, yes. That's a funny joke. But I'm not going to take you seriously enough to use that rhetoric to reduce work. Che, you're still serious. You're really. I think it's a strength. Ha, indeed. I said something boring, so forget it. Yes, let me do that. How can one forget? Damrata just evaded it. He wanted to maintain the relationship as it was, wanted to play for Rudra all the time. And then, time passes. Ah, sure enough, I lose something very important after every reincarnation. What's lost I don't know myself, that's the question. Your Majesty. I say, Damrata. Yes. This is an edict. If I'm going to be no more, you kill me yourself. Lord Rudra. There's no way to ask Veilgrind for something like this, is there? I couldn't do it either, those words, Damrata pressed down with all his might. If this was the wish of his dear friend Rudra, he could not answer in the negative. Yeah, if that happens, I promise to take care of the aftermath for Rudra Summer, so please rest assured that you'll be able to complete your administrative tasks. Well, you haven't changed. I'll leave you to it. That was a pact made long ago. And then the time went on. I am tired, and there is a limit to restraining my Justice King Michael from going out of control. Absolute righteousness is not much different from evil at the root of the matter. Justice that all can identify with does not exist in this world. Your Majesty. Damrata, you and I made a deal, remember? Of course I remember. Hearing this reply, Rudra said that's good and smiled. Changing expressions, solemnly issuing commands. Damrata, this is an edict. In order to be prepared in case you miss, go find someone who can break the King of Justice and kill the rest as an alternate. It's hard for me to do such a thing, but you have to be ready for everything in my time. Faced with this as if it were an order to obliterate Rudra himself, Damrata could only nod. Your orders, I understand. Hearing Damrata's reply, Rudra muttered, I'm sorry. Rudra looked off into the distance as if talking to himself. In retrospect, this King of Justice that my friend entrusted to me was probably too powerful for me. Win or lose, the next matchup with Guy will probably be the last. I want to fully master this skill. If there is a sign of going berserk, there is no need to worry and you must stop my actions. I'll do as I'm told. Please. After saying that, Rudra closed his eyes. Thinking about the vows he had exchanged with the star dragon, Veldenava, he was filled with resentment that he had not kept his promise to the end. A small whisper escaped Rudra's mouth, if you can't make a deal, go to that world and make amends. Damrata pretended not to hear the words and quietly withdrew from the room. Choking on the blood from his own mouth, Damrata's consciousness was pulled back to reality. In less than a few seconds, consciousness flew into the distance. Your Majesty, yes or no? I failed to complete by your edict. In the consciousness that was about to dissipate, Damrata wanted to utter this remorse, but was no longer able to do so and spat out another mouthful of blood. Regret. However, there was a sense of relief. The search for the one who can kill his beloved master, this edict is only painful for Damrata. Long hours of agonizing over it. Absolutely. For Damrata, Emperor Rudra was always a shining hero as always. Will you kill something like that? How could I possibly do that? Why should I do it? Can't we just let someone else do it? If you no longer exist in this world, I have no attachment to this world. I'd like to go with you. This is what Damrata wants from his heart. Neither Guy nor Rudra's match-up seemed to matter to Damrata. What matters is what Rudra thinks, and the world that can reflect his thoughts. Guy Crimson, though an arrogant demon king, is not an unreasonable tyrant. His domination is unshakable. He will make his own proper rules and stubbornly follow them. Guy and Rudra's ideals, while different, are not absolutely incompatible, and in Damrata's view, the two are perfectly capable of compromise. Guy shouldn't be able to act on his own. It was because of this certainty that Rudra issued an edict to Damrata, right? Why cling to victory and defeat when it's clear that there is mutual recognition? Damrata is really puzzled. But again, there was no way to do something against Rudra's will, and as a result, he had to follow his orders and operate around the world. After leaving the Emperor's banner for a long time, someone was found who could serve as an alternative. This boy, Yuki Kagurazuka, has a super powerful physique called ability blocking. This physique could even invalidate an ultimate skill, and Damrata was happy to think that he was able to fight against the King of Justice, but he still ended up losing badly, and Yuki also fell into Rudra's hands, which was no longer useful. The killer was lost, but that's when a question suddenly arose in Damrata's mind. Why, Your Majesty, should you dominate Yuki? Huh, what? To this whisper that contained no intention, Ultima asked rhetorically. Without giving an explanation, Damrata continued to ponder. It was undoubtedly Rudra who had ordered the search for the man who could kill him, and he should not have interfered with the matter. No, it's not. It's just that Damrata doesn't want to believe it yet. The signs have been there since the beginning. Indeed, it is so, His Majesty, Lord Rudra, has. Like Damrata, delirious from fever, muttered. What the hell are you talking about? Feeling anxious, Ultima shouted out questions that didn't reach Damrata's ears. Damrata was, for the moment, single-mindedly sinking into his own thoughts. Perhaps it should be said that the dying flash of an apparition made Damrata's thinking very sharp. Thus, the search for the truth. Rudra is passionate about his ideals. To dream of a united world and permanent peace. No more strife and poverty, and humanity can focus on development. If the unification of all mankind becomes peaceful, then all can live equally. Rudra, who believes in this, has set the goal of building a united nation. Human beings are mutually intelligible creatures, capable of uniting their wills one day and working together to create a better world. Rudra believes this from the bottom of his heart. He became a hero for the sake of the people, carrying great pain and hardship. To make life happy for more people, Rudra kept running for this desire. Damrata loves Rudra like this. But Rudra's ideals came to an end when they were still at the dream stage. Before the ideal is realized, Rudra himself has gone rogue. The ideals we were striving for turned out to be broken a long time ago. Damrata identified with this and was overwhelmed with sadness in his heart. Are you crying? Ah. For fear of death? No, because of the agreement. Agreement? Ah. Unable to avoid death, clinging to Damrata without letting go. It was something that could not be helped, and he could put up with it, but the inability to keep the covenant with Rudra was unbearable for Damrata. Rudra's consciousness had dissipated, and who was Rudra now, exactly? There's only one answer to this kind of thing. It was undoubtedly Veldinava, the star dragon, the friend of Rudra, who gave him the ultimate skill of the King of Justice. Before Rudra's mental breakdown, Damrata still had edicts that had to be fulfilled. But he seems to be about to die without being able to achieve the mission. Damrata, who wanted to berate himself for his incompetence, turned around and realized that the situation had not yet reached its worst moment. No matter what, the King of Justice has to be stopped from going berserk, and if Damrata fails, it will be necessary to find someone worthy of entrusting this task. This is the edict of Rudra, the pact that Damrata should keep. In addition to Yuki, there was one other person who had a clue. The dreaded demon lord, Rimuru. He is both the greatest enemy and the place of hope. May I ask you to kill His Majesty, Lord Rudra? Huh? Why us? It doesn't have to be you, no, no, no. Let's just leave it to us. We were going to kill that Rudra guy anyway, not that we couldn't accept your request. Ultima's character does as she pleases. While not going to respond frankly, actually kinda like Damrata. The battles lasted a short time, but for Ultima, who had an infinite lifespan, it was the quality of the battle that was valued more. To be able to experience such a fierce battle that coalesces in a short period of time, it feels like no matter what is said, it is allowed. Then, there is one more thing. What? That, the boy named Masayuki, please protect him. Damrata was convinced. It's just that. Yes, I can. But it come at a cost, right? Demons don't fight for nothing. While this is not an absolute rule, there are all sorts of ways to circumvent it. But this time, it was Ultima's capriciousness, wanting to see Damrata troubled, that made the question. However, hearing Ultima's question, Damrata was relieved. He felt like he had been liberated, and then he replied calmly, "The reward is, all of me. Everything about my soul, all the technology I have, I entrust it all to you." Accepted. Looking at Ultima, who gave a reluctant reply, Damrata smiled. And then, "Your Majesty Rudra, now, I will go to your side." These are the last words that Damrata left behind. Stopped breathing like he was asleep. Former Chancellor of the Nazca Kingdom and a close friend of the unified Emperor Rudra Nam Ul Nazca. The curtain has come down on the long career of the Saint Damrata. In the midst of the circular brawling arena of isospace, Ultima stood alone. Aha, what a bore. The core of his heart disappeared and it was still intended for Lord Rimuru. As a somewhat lonely Ultima muttered, she wrapped the remains of Damrata gently in 12 wings. According to the agreement, taking the whole of Damrata for her own possession. That's it, the end. The end of Damrata and Ultima's matchup. The job of the Fist Saint came to an end, and a new demon of the Fist was born. Damrata gave one of the most vicious demons the most ferocious power in his final moments. Would he be unbearably ashamed if he knew about it? Or perhaps be happy with the inheritance of their skills? Damrata is dead and there is no way to know about it. Those who survive can only ponder this question in their hearts. Come, I'll be your opponent. In the middle of the round fight arena, Ajira makes an announcement to Kondo. Kondo frowned and without a word raised the hand that held the saber, not responding to Ajira, and just looked at Carrera. "Don't worry, I'm only here as a witness." Ridiculous. How can you believe what you say? Kondo, who finally spoke, was quite sharp in his words. It's like saying, since it's the enemy, let the two go together. However, Carrera made no move. True enough, I don't think 2-on-1 is a despicable act, and I'm not going to take it out on you. But this time, it was because of the wishes of Ajira over there. Don't worry about me, just enjoy the fight. Not only did she say so, but she also sat directly on the stone wall to show that it had nothing to do with her. Kondo shrugged. What a farce. But I'll just take the spirit. Then came the drawn saber and confronted Ajira. Thank you very much. Then, just for goodness sake. A crisp voice rang out, interrupting his words. Ajira covered his chest and collapsed on the field. You. Carrera momentarily drew a short distance and broke between Kondo and Ajira, blocking the sword that Kondo was about to cut off Ajira's head with. Humph, can you catch up to this speed? Kondo, who held a large Southern-style automatic pistol with smoke coming from the muzzle in his right hand and wielded a saber in his left, said so in the direction of Carrera. You knew I could make it, didn't you? If you were serious, Ajira would have been wiped out by now, wouldn't she? Kondo didn't say anything about accepting the invitation to the Ajira showdown, so it was a lapse on Ajira's part to not confirm beforehand. And she wasn't really going to make a killing blow, and Carrera, who had blocked her opponent's sword, knew it best. A strong man like Kondo should not lose even a head-to-head fight with Ajira. If it's just a sword fight, maybe a nice showdown at some point. But even so, the outcome of Kondo's victory probably won't falter. Even so, the surprise attack was made because Carrera was on the sidelines. It is pie in the sky to believe the words of the enemy, let alone the words of the devil, and it is the foolishness of those who really believe. The exclusion of uncertain elements is the iron rule of combat. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have time for this farce. Kondo turned to face Carrera, sneering at the uncharitable state of affairs. Well, if you think so, then I'll be your opponent. With this sword? Carrera's sword had cracked from the blow just delivered, no doubt it would break from a few more blows, and Carrera couldn't have failed to notice it. No way, there are alternatives, only I have a better sword. Ajira, you understand. Of course. It's a pity that I didn't get to fight with the last generation of my school, but I can't complain if I think that it's because I'm following your teachings. The discontent is only the contempt for my old master, which only deprives me of my fighting power. Saying so, Ajira stood up. The wound in his chest had been closed, and the bullet Kondo fired was called an annihilation bullet, which, according to the magical power of the load, caused an equal amount of energy to disappear. If it was a spell bomb, it would be very difficult for Ajira to stand up again. As Carrera and Ajira had noticed, it was clear that Kondo wasn't attacking with all his might. But, because of this, Ajira was able to keep fighting. Negation knife changed negation. Ajira became a knife, and the one holding the knife was undoubtedly Carrera. Carrera's magic filled the void in Ajira, and the lost energy came back again. The result was that the blade shone brightly and Ajira's chi became full. That's stupid. It took a comrade living as a sword to let you off the hook. My dependents love to fight. That's a lot of concern. Is that so? There is no point in talking about it now. He has dared to impersonate the founder of the sect, and his crime is unforgivable. In Kondo's view, Carrera, who held the sword that Ajira had changed into in her hands, was also guilty of the same thing. Showing unabashedly clear hostility, Kondo struck a serious pose. The battle began in less than half a quarter of an hour. Carrera fell to her knees. Incredibly, Kondo was powerful to the point of terror. As the saying goes, damn. Even in Carrera's opinion, he was a monster beyond belief. Carrera knew she was strong, but at the same time, understood that there are people of all people. In fact, one would have thought that even if one couldn't beat Diablo, one probably wouldn't lose to anyone else. However, it would be met with ease by Zijin. This battle was also, facing Veilgrind didn't take much advantage. So even though she was at Kondo's mercy now, Carrera wasn't shocked. Not only that, but euphoria even ran high. Carrera rolls lightly on the ground to close the distance from Kondo, stand up smoothly and adjust again to the posture of pointing the tip of the knife at the opponent's eyes. Very good. My swordsmanship is praised even by Ajira, but it still seems inferior to yours. Shut up. I'm just trying to use my own power to beat my opponent, and I'm so angry that I'm saying that. Kondo himself was creeped out by Carrera's fighting instincts, and since this wasn't the time to be able to have fun, he struck out with full force from the start. Not only swordsmanship, but also the power of the extreme ability King of Execution is being used unstintingly. However, it didn't quite beat Carrera. That alone was already worthy of awe, and Kondo's heart couldn't help but warble over it. It seems that this is not an opponent that can be solved easily, with mutual awareness of this. As a result, the fighting intensified. With brute force, Carrera struck at Kondo with her sword, impeding his movement. Kondo lightly opens Carrera's attack with a knife rack and snaps Carrera with a right-handed shot. The power placed in this round is to disarm the magic. This bullet is called a spell breaker. Kondo chose this bullet because of the anticipation of Carrera's next move. No need to chant a mantra, the gravitational force field is instantly formed. Kondo points out that Carrera, who only knows how to use her power, is not only not reflecting, but also relying on her own power, trying to unleash magic that does not affect her and hinder Kondo's actions. Seeing this, Kondo chose the spell breaker. The extremely high generalization of this ability is the powerful secret of Kondo. There are roughly 4 effects of the research pole ability King of Execution, and Kondo will adapt them to the situation. A boundary breaker can break the defensive boundary of an creature. The spell breaker can remove magic effects. The spellbusters are capable of destroying the magical circuits of creatures. The Annihilation Bomb is a high-density magic bomb that can expend energy by seeing through the nature of the creature. The most powerful bullet that can do all of the above at the same time is the Godspeed bullet. Before that, Carrera had been deliberately chanting spells for magical attacks. It was all in preparation for this matchup, but all the magic was unspellable the moment it was unleashed, and Kondo's predictions were accurate, always making the right choices. And there are all sorts of bullets being shot through the cracks. Failure to see through its nature and react to it will leave Carrera with serious injuries. If there is any hesitation, it is estimated that the winner will be decided in an instant. Kondo was really calm when he analyzed the battle situation. Unhurried, bordering on mechanical.